This session is about anti-patterns. This will be applicable to almost all the roles in any software development team. So I will quickly begin with it. So this is a little bit about me. I have 18 plus years of industry experience. I work as a principal architect with T-Mobile, and I am a Microsoft MVP and of course a C# Corner MVP as well. I am TOGAF CSM Microsoft certified. I have authored 5 books. As you can see at the bottom on the left side, and then I have over a dozen books, as you can see on the right-hand side for the technical review part. To begin with the session, first we need to understand what is an anti-pattern. Ideally, an anti-pattern is always something where we are trying to applying a solution, but when we are trying to solve something, it actually generates negative consequences. As you can see in the image here, that somebody is trying to mow the lawn, means you are cutting the grass in your lawn. But as you can see, it's not collecting that grass which is being cut, but it's spreading it all around. So this is sort of an image which is depicting an anti-pattern in a very common situation, which is not related to any software word, of course. So to begin with it, the very first one I will talk about is called analysis paralysis. This is usually related to the situation when somebody is working on a project. Ideally, it happens at the beginning of the project because that is when we are trying to understand all the requirements, what customer wants. Usually, this analysis paralysis was a very commonly known anti-pattern in waterfall days when our development methodology was waterfall. But in today's world, many people argue that it's not possible because we are doing agile, which is more iterative and incremental style of writing softwares. However, what happens is many times when we do that, we do not have a situation where you have all the information even available from the product owners or scrum masters or the team. So to go over this content in the slide, first thing is that you have to stop thinking over and over. That's what you need to do. So an action that occurs when goal is to achieve perfection and completeness. So the 2 keywords to take away from analysis paralysis is when a team or an individual is trying to achieve perfection or completeness. That's not possible. And that's why we are living in the world of software development where we are using agile or iterative and incremental. So the root causes of this could be assuming detailed analysis can be successfully completed prior to coding. That's not possible. There is no way that you can really do the complete analysis of your situation before your software development begins. So that's not possible. Now, assuming analysis model will not be extended nor revised during development. Many times dev teams start even in agile days and they think that no requirement will change. That's not possible. That's why we have agile requirements can change. So what you do, whatever is in a sprint, in a user story, you just take that and you move forward with it. As I said earlier, the solutions to this anti-pattern is incremental development, agile, Scrum. Today we have something called SAFe also, that is a scaled agile framework. Many teams do Caveman way of development. Whatever methodology work for your team, go with it, and then take iterative and incremental. Many times when we do not have a perfect scope defined, try to go for MVP, that is minimum viable product. That okay, what is the minimum viable product we are trying to make, and then you go from that point onwards. So the next I have is scope creep, and scope creep is basically also known as requirement creep or kitchen sink syndrome. What happens in here is this basically refers to continuous changes, uncontrolled growth, or at times even not knowing what customer wants. I have myself written so many SOWs. I did a lot of pre-sales architecting, working with small, large, medium customers across the globe. many times we only document what the requirements of the project are, what is needed in the project. What we also need to start doing, and I do know that many of you do it, if not, then emphasize more on it. And if you are doing it, try to cover even small things. I will give you a few examples. But before that, let's understand it completely, that what scope creep means. And in many ways, it could be really, harmful as well. You can have even feature creeps. You can have entire scope creep for the whole project. And once this happens, what happens is that you have a poor change control. You may not have, a complete project objectives defined which customer wants. And all these things usually take place when you have either a weak project manager or an executive sponsor. Also, it can be, it can be contributed, or it can come into your project life because there is poor communication between the parties. When I say parties, means it is customer, the dev team, the project sponsor, the business team, product owner team, and whatnot. So coming back to the point that how do we take care of a scope creep? So when you understand the project, make sure you also document what is in a scope, and at the same time you list out what is out of a scope. To give you a few examples, let's say you are working for a customer, and the customer has two sort of customers. One is internal customers, who are their employees running inside their firewall, using their Active Directory credentials to log in. And then they have external customers. They are using different email IDs to log in, right? Then you need a separate identity access manager thing, and you cannot rely on Active Directory logins. Means you cannot do a single sign-ons. The other one is, think about you are writing an application which you are writing primarily in US English or English UK, but they also have customer, let's say in Europe or in some other countries. You need to translate it to Spanish or Russian or German or any other language for that matter. Now, many times we just overlook these things. We do not try to call out these things. Maybe they want a lot of performance testing to be done. Maybe they want a lot of threat detection to be done. There are many things which can derail you from your delivery timelines and what is the scope of the project. So always call out that, okay, in this project phase, whatever SOW you are putting forward for the given timeline, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever, what all your team is committed to achieve. So you say out of scope is identity access manager or external customers login. Out of scope is a translation to any language other than US English, or whatever are the items. Sometimes it may sound very small and silly, but my style has always been even to call it out. That doesn't hurt, because tomorrow if you fall into those traps and issues, you know what you committed and what are the issues you called out are in the scope and out of the scope. The next one I have is called deploying software manually. This is sort of this is happening in some places. I would say not all places. And what happens here is that some teams and some organizations are still deploying their softwares manually. Not every company and every team is really a true DevOps team. They do not have adopted CI/CD pipelines to deploy their softwares automatically. This usually happens when you are deploying a software to a QA or a production environment, and you have a whole lot of manual steps. Means you write proper release notes. There will be somebody who will review your notes, approve it. You take the database scripts in a folder, deploy it to some server shared folder. You produce your artifacts, maybe your EXEs or DLLs if you are on .NET, your jar files if you are on Java, your eggs if you are using Python, and all these things, and then you again put it on a shared folder. And a third person, usually a network ops or infra person, will go read your notes, go to those folders, take those deployable units, and put it in IIS and map those things. So I have written so many documentation myself years ago. So the problem here is the root cause for deploying software manually is that you have long delivery cycles. Means your team is collecting a software, a check-ins over the period of time, and you have the large chunk of code commits, and then you heavily rely on a production-only deployment, means you do not have other deployments like dev, for example, QA, and staging, and some sort of other non-production environment, or you just have like QA and production. So in such situations, what happens is you rely to deploy softwares manually. The solution to this, as I said at the beginning, is that you have to really go with the DevOps solution in mind. You have to start thinking about how we become a DevOps team. How can we deploy software effectively and frequently? The next I have is called Lava Flow. Lava Flow is basically nothing, if you want to really remember it, Lava Flow is nothing more than sort of dead code in your project. So as you can see in the image on the right-hand side, what happens with lava is that it hardens wherever it, it converts into a rock, a proper black color rock. That's what lava does. So it hardens. So to give you some sort of situation and scenario is that how many times you might have heard that I don't know what this class or function does, or it was written even before I was here in this team, or I joined this team, or the person who wrote it has left the team. And not only that, even when you are doing code review, or sometimes you are traversing through the code, navigating through the code repositories, you will sometimes think what this function is doing, or what this variable is doing, or what this class is doing. Many times you will find so many unused variables, functions, methods, classes, interfaces, and whatnot, right? So what are these things? The question is that what value these things are serving. So many times there is nobody using those things. And in today's world, IDEs, whether you are using Visual Studio.net or you are using IntelliJ or WebStorm, whatever is your IDE of choice, depending upon the technology, of course, you are committed to. What happens is those IDE are intelligent enough to tell you what is being used and what is unused so you can get rid of it. But if you continue to leave that crap in the code, then what happens is your number of lines are increasing over a period of years. Many times we try to write less lines of code which are more performant, more efficient, more effective, but still number of lines are increasing in your code base. In that case, you keep adding more lines, and then those dead code keep hiding deeper and deeper and deeper into your code base. Now, the fix for this is really being aware and proactively looking for the warnings and suggestions your IDE and various tools like SonarQube also tells and screams about at times, that we are not using this interface or this class or this code or this variable, for example, or even a using or imports statement, right? All those things are not being used, so get rid of it. And if there is a function or a method or a class which has a lot of stuff which is not being used, then of course the refactoring is the keyword here. You need to really refactor, look for the code cleanup. The only situation here is that the consequence rather, that the moment you remove something which you are not sure whether what impact it might have. However, today there are so many ways you can generate a dependency graph in Visual Studio or in many other tools to figure out where this thing is being used, right? Or is there a unit test? You can run unit tests, you can run your integrated tests. There are so many ways to check whether that code is serving any value or not, but it might incur you a more cost because you will be taking time out of your sprint efforts and estimation you have provided, and then you have to invest a little bit more into testing. But whenever and where you get an opportunity to get rid of any dead code or anything, start small, think big. It could be even a using a statement, a variable. Keep deleting those, don't keep it. You can easily find it in your IDE itself. But if you need a larger, then you need to really proper plan for it. It's a technical debt, and you need to do proper refactoring. The next anti-pattern I have is called boat anchor. Boat anchor is, as you can see the image on the left-hand side, Port anchor is basically any piece of software or hardware which a team has procured or taken that, okay, we will use this thing. But once you got it, it actually serves no useful purpose on the current project. I have been into those situations many times. I worked with an organization where we were designing a BI solution, and they invested into a reporting tool. But for some reason, that reporting tool served no value based upon our needs, the data store we had, and all that stuff. So I had to really, rethink and use the tool which was already available at no cost. Means it was already included in the licensing of the software which the company procured already. So the root cause is basically it's about a commitment to the product is made without proper technical evaluation. We just go ahead with something that, okay, get that database system or get that reporting solution or any tool set, for instance. The solution to that is that significant efforts have to be made by the development team to make that work. That is number one. The other issue could be the skill set. Many times, let's say today, we say somebody's writing microservices, go and start writing microservices in Python. And we buy entire tool chain to deliver microservices using Python, for instance. But if team does not have that skill set, but your team is very efficient, your product is being delivered to the customer, customers are happy, you are meeting all the check marks in your checklist, using whatever technology you have, let's say Golang, .NET Core, even .NET, or let's say Spring Boot, right? If those things are working fine, then there is no point in investing into something which is not helping you to move forward in a faster way, in a better way, and in an efficient way. So any such situation can be considered as an anti-pattern called as boat anchor. The other one I have is called golden hammer. As you can see the image on the left, a golden hammer is basically, it's about always emphasizing upon only one tool or one solution or one technology all the time, no matter what. So for example, let's say I am an architect and you come to me and say, okay, we are working on a large customer base, enterprise line of business application. We are going to have millions of customers and we are looking for a database solution. What do you suggest? And I always give you relational database system. I say, go with SQL Server, for example, or I say, go with Oracle or go with MySQL or Aurora DB, whatever, right? Now, I need to think actually, or that person need to think that a relational data store cannot solve all the problems, or all the problems cannot be solved by a relational database system, or any technology for that matter. So what happens is because I am comfortable with using SQL Server, then I cannot fail that, or I cannot suggest that every time to every single situation. As I correctly mentioned at the beginning, that there are millions of customers, means write less, read more. You need to implement CQRS pattern, means you have to have a NoSQL. Your write schema will be different and your read schema will be different. In that case, you need to introduce a NoSQL data store. Ideally for this situation is a Cassandra. Cassandra is the right solution for that. Means a SQL Server, if you just put everything in a relational data store, then you will have joins between the tables. And as you know, joins take efforts on the CPU cycles, your input output, and query performance is also impacted. So you need to be careful before you provide that. So the solution to this is that you really need to think about, forget about your comfort zone, first of all, what me as an architect is comfortable about. Think about what will be in favor of the project, what will be in favor of the customer, and then look for the technical feasibility of the candidate technologies out there. So if I have SQL Server, it's a good candidate technology, but only for the right operations. When we do read, we need a NoSQL, and hence I have to introduce a NoSQL data store in this situation and come out of that person or come out of the comfort zone, basically. Now, I hope you guys are following along. I will be taking questions at the end. I will make sure I leave some time at the end. Um, Now, the next one I have is spaghetti code. As you can see, image on the right, it's basically about all that jumbled up code. It's all tangled all together. So many dependencies, circular dependency is the very common thing for that. Ideally, a lot of repetition, uh, not following dry principle. That means do not repeat yourself. Of course, object-oriented programming could be implemented, but it is very hard to implement object-oriented design correctly at times and following all the design principles. So think about any entangled code, repeated functions, and then code which is hard to understand, hard to follow along, hard to debug, of course, and then sort of not following object-oriented design principles. If you have any such code, and usually this code is written for those softwares which are either not the enterprise line of business applications or not written by very experienced teams, or written in a language for that matter, which is not supporting object-oriented design at all, which is very rare today in fourth generation languages. And then the time and era we are living in and the IDEs and the tool set we have today. It's just that we need to harness the power of those technologies. Now, the solution to that is that you really need to invest into refactoring. The dev team needs to really understand and assimilate and absorb solid design principles. Solid is a single responsibility, open close, Liskov substitution, interface segregation, and dependency inversion. These are 5 design principles. If any team follows that, your code will be rock solid. You can learn about these things. It's very easily available. And many times we follow some of the principles out of the box, like how MVC pattern is done in .NET. Some of the principles are being followed there by itself, but some are you have to do due diligence to implement those. The next one is cut and paste programming. This is very common. We all are guilty of copying and pasting code, which is totally fine. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. Take it something which is available out there. The only situation is that if you do cut and paste programming, or I take a code from Stack Overflow or somewhere, which we all do, and that is totally fine. It's all open source, right? We learn from each other. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. Get the code, get the idea, but then utilize your intelligence. That's the point. And that's what the anti-pattern is. When you do that, you do not apply your intelligence. You just take it as is, paste it, compile it. It compiles or builds successfully. You do some testing. It works fine, and you just submit the pull request for code review or even check in and then deploy it. There are few issues with that. Many times in my code review, I have seen a code or classes and controllers and methods and things which are not in use at all. We don't need it. There is no feature or user story we are working for it, right? For example, let me give you one situation, caching. I'm sure that most of us have implemented caching. Let's say Redis cache, right? And in caching, there is a thing called cache invalidation, right? Or delete cache. So whatever you are doing, you are deleting or invalidating, whatever you are doing, many times when you go and look for those caching solutions, what happens is that you copy paste the code, but there are so many extra functions which we are not applying in our caching strategy. We are only setting the cache and getting the cache. But there is also delete, invalidate, and many more variables and many more functions, different flavors of that. If you see, you ask the person, okay, what are these for? Sometimes there is no answer to that. The same situation could be in other situation as well. When you copy pasted some, a normally or commonly used situation in the world where every software development team uses, and then you just copy paste the code, right? So what happened in that case is, number one, you got lava flow, you got dead code, which is not being used. I already spoke about lava flow. Second thing is you are introducing complexity. Third thing is your code coverage will go lower because you have more code, but there are no test cases written for it because your use case is only set the cache, get the cache, right? Not delete or invalidate in this case, for example. And then what happens is the code you are adding, is introducing more complexity. Many people will just scratch their head and think, what is the purpose of this thing, right? And maintenance cost goes high. So the root cause for that is the lack of familiarity with new technology and tools. Uh, New technology and tool is sort of confusing here. Just I would say lack of familiarity with what you are copying and pasting. So utilize your intelligence. Solutions to this are detection policies. Uh, Ask yourself questions: do I need it or not? Only take or get influenced by where you are copying and pasting the code from. What you need, not everything. You take it out. I have seen even in my code reviews, variable names even passed and submitted code review with class name as foo, because wherever you got it from, the class name was foo. People even don't use that much intelligence to change the class name. So copy it, paste it, but use your intelligence. That's the idea, right? So code reviewer need to be very diligent, really paying attention to it. But before you submit code review, it's a developer's responsibility to really think through and then give the right code out there for the review. The next one I have is a Swiss Army knife. As you can see, a Swiss Army knife image on the right-hand side. It's basically excessively complex class or interface, also known as many times God class. Means one class doing everything. Means you are not following single responsibility principle. So the root cause is there is no clear abstraction of the purpose or responsibility in the class. And you want to get the code out of the door as soon as possible. You don't care about the structure of the code, following solid design principles, thinking about creating abstract classes, interfaces, inheritance, polymorphism, methods, functions, variables, or anything. Just write everything in one big class and get it done. The solution is, of course, object-oriented design is the key, but solid design principles really come to rescue, and it will be more cost, technical debt, and a team needs to learn and understand it. Next I have is reinvent the wheel. Many times when we are building the software solutions ground up means you are doing a greenfield application. So there are two, one is greenfield, one is brownfield. Brownfield is when you already have an application like maintenance project sort of thing, or there is already good, large, big code base available and you are adding more features to it, more initiatives, more user stories to it. Greenfield is that nothing exists, or even something exists, you can completely ignore it. You start fresh. Green field means clean slate. There is nothing. So whenever you are building software systems from the ground up, there are so many overlapping functionality. You can always look back and find solutions which exist in the ecosystem. So do not try to build something from scratch all the time. Like at T-Mobile, when we do stuff, many times we don't reinvent. I have pulled out solution from many other teams. I know that we are doing this thing. We trust you also have the same use case. How did you do it? How does your microservices look like? How does your UI look like? I ask even access to their code repositories, look at the code, see what bits and pieces we can take away from. And there, it serves two purposes. Uh, One is that my understanding has increased. And then second is we already got some code we can begin with. Many times that may or may not work, but the idea is do not completely reinvent. There is something called architecture mining, means the precursor designs exist, like some blueprints might exist, some architecture design, sequence diagrams, high-level design, low-level design. All those things might exist somewhere in the system, and look out for those and do not reinvent. Once you have, uh, you know, uh, chased all the options and you said, okay, there is no option available, then you can do it, but make sure you look out, because there will be somebody who will say, oh, why are you building it again? We already have that thing. So do your due diligence, look out for options, and then only take a decision. This is a very interesting anti-pattern. It's called frozen caveman. What does it mean is a frozen caveman means uh, when someone always reverts to their irrational concerns for every architecture decision they are making. And that could be influenced due to some of the past bad experiences when somebody burned their fingers when doing some architecture design, or they have been into a project And that's why they really want to be cautious about the same thing in future. Let me give you one example. I'm just making it up. For example, I am an architect. I am working for a customer, and for some reason, when I was architect for that, one of the cloud provider, I will not name any, there are so many today. One of the cloud provider we used at that time, one of their reason was down for a few hours, and customer was really mad, right? Now, so customers today are across the globe, right? In T-Mobile, we have 85 plus million customers, and after Sprint merger, we have many, many more. So, and we have customers across United States and other countries. And even if you travel outside United States, you have free roaming on T-Mobile to other countries. So we keep tracking your data. We keep adding stuff into our systems about your moves and where you are and all that stuff, right? The calls you made and whatnot. So customers are everywhere, means every large company has to be globally dispersed and distributed when they are designing their cloud workloads. So I have to be available in East and West regions primarily, or central region, and other countries, other continents as well on the cloud. So when I design the same thing for different customer, that does not mean that I cannot use the same cloud provider. What if that customer is already logged into that cloud provider? They said, oh, we have this cloud provider, we want to design architecture for this one. You cannot say, no, I will not do it, because that happened many, many years ago, or maybe even last year. And what if they have customer in the same region where that data center went down for a few hours, which is rare though. But think about it hypothetically, right? So the thing here is that do not feel burned, even in future what happened in the past. So while you are really focused on the risk assessment and you are doing all the right thing, we have to be realistic as well. We need to understand the difference between a genuine risk and a perceived risk. And that is the part of ongoing learning process. As an architect, you know that all the cloud providers, all the technologies are maturing day by day. So if something happened in the past, not necessarily it may happen again, but you can take preventive measures. For example, you can do multi-region architecture. If you are doing US West, for example, and you know that US West went down that time, you may choose US West too. There are multiple regions even in each region as well. So in any cloud provider you go, you will have US East and then US East 2. You will have US West 2. Or choose a nearby region, or do a little bit more deeper research of what measures that cloud provider has taken after that region was down. I gave you just an example. You can think of many more. Talk to me afterwards if you need to discuss more about it. The next one I have is very interesting one, and I really like it. And this is the last slide. By the way, I want to make sure I leave some time for questions at the end. So this is my favorite one, okay? And I do know that many companies and many teams, individuals do that. It is called email-driven architecture. Now, what happens in today's world is we are having large distributed teams. We have, distributed Scrum, multiple teams running in different continents. And with this COVID, now everybody is remote. Think about it. Now, as a developer, dev lead, whoever you are, it's not about the title. It's only about architects, right? Whoever you are, and let's say you are the one who has a say in the architecture level decisions, or you are an architect by yourself and you are presenting a design to the larger team. Many times I have seen people feel very comfortable in exchanging those thoughts over the email. They keep writing long emails, keep adding plus. Now, the problem with that is that email will be lost one fine day, okay? Second thing is, whoever is reading that email at that time, that person will put the email aside, start implementing it, it's done, everybody forgot about it. Tomorrow, if a new developer joins who has no previous email history, what about them? How would they learn about your architecture decisions you have made? How would they learn about what sort of important decisions we have made about our architecture? What is our architecture style? Where are the best practices, design principles, design guidelines, how we are doing privacy, how we are doing security, how we are taking care of encryption, how we are creating sequence diagrams, how does one customer journey begins, what all systems you are hopping through in your microservices layer. How does your API gateway look like? Think about whole 9 yards, right? Now, what I have seen is that people feel very comfortable writing emails, exchanging ideas over and over, back and forth, and they say, okay, it's good, go implement it. That's not the right approach. The real rule of communicating architecture is not to write emails. Rather, you need to document it at one place. Even TOGAF, the Open Group Architecture Framework. This is one of the certifications for software architects, and I am software architect, certified architect from TOGAF. There are two levels. One is foundation, one is certified. You can read about it, you can learn about it. So I am certified. Even TOGAF has a word in it, and it is called architecture repository. Now you might be thinking, how do I begin with architecture repository in my team? If you are using SharePoint, use SharePoint space and document all your architecture there on some sort of wiki pages. At T-Mobile, we use Confluence. You can use Confluence to document all the pages, create the structure, proper tree structure for every single thing, go and document it there. People can search it. And in your email, when you are done, you send that link. The team, we discussed about it in the meeting. I have documented the architecture. Please go and review it. People can leave comments there. They can like your page. They can follow along. That page will persist there forever. And it's just one place you need to change. And even if a new person joins or other team asks you something, no digging into emails. You just go and refer to that QWiki page and it's there. So document it once and spread it as many times as you want. So with this, I want to thank everybody for listening. And you can find this slide deck on my GitHub as well after some time, later today or tomorrow. You can go and check it there. You can check my blog also. And now I open up for questions. If there are any questions, I will take the questions to answer.
Thanks, Vidya. I don't think there are any questions in the Q&A section.
All right.
Yeah, and thanks for this wonderful session. It was a great session with wonderful slides and great representation. So thanks for taking up your time for this cause and coming on this call and giving us these insights. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. I will drop now.
Sure. Thanks.